Hello. It's Nadine here, and I'm here with this week's episode of Life, Health, and the Universe. And I'm joined today by a real life Wonder Woman, Alison Wheeler. Alison, welcome. I like to start our conversations here on the podcast with an introduction of the things I know about you or the things I think I might know about you, even though we haven't met before. And then you can fill in some of the gaps, tell me where I was right and wrong, and we'll go from there. So, Alison, you're you're from New Zealand. You're a wife and mum of one. You have been a competitive athlete. You are an occupational therapist. You're a coach. And more recently, you've become an author, unless you've got a book that's preceded the one that you've generously gifted me. That's what I've got to get us started. There's going to be lots of gaps to fill in, I'm sure. And they can, So how would you introduce yourself?
Yes, well, I am all of those things, and I'm very glad that I am only a wife of one. I don't think I could manage two husbands. That'd be tough, right? One, there's plenty. But yes, I also have one daughter. So you are correct in all of those things. I am all of those things, and yes, I am just newly an author. No, I don't have another book that I tucked up my sleeve anywhere. Or maybe another one later on, but not previously. So yeah, look, I've been an entrepreneur as well for 13, nearly 15 years in total. So, and, I've just had the pleasure of working with some amazing people along that way, amazing insights. And I think too, from an occupational therapy point of view, like being like that training, I think it's a really interesting training. It's very different to a lot of other health professionals in that your viewpoint is you in the middle and everything else expands out from you. So, in terms of your interactivity with the world, and also the importance of being a productive person, whatever productivity is to the individual is very different. And how I think that when we are not in that state of feeling productive, how destructive that actually is for your spiritual self, but physical self and those around you as well. So I think it's just put me, I guess that training, maybe I probably lent to that training because I think I always thought like that anyway. And that's sort of how I fell into that, because I did, I went down the path of health first, started a dietetics degree, and then realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. Did health and fitness, did diploma in that, realized that wasn't really my wheelhouse. So it took a little while, I think, to find who am I? What's my path? What do I really want to do with my life? Maybe I'm still working that out too. Do we ever answer that question?
I
Not
was going to say to you, do you reckon that you're there? Because I want to know what the key is.
Yeah. Well, when I grow up, I want to be. No, I think it is really, and it's an evolving journey. Well, I hope it's an evolving journey for a lot of people, though. I also think, Nadine, that we get stuck, right? We don't actually evolve. And I think we're supposed to. We're supposed to be a continuing evolution and iteration of a new version of ourselves, a new version of ourselves. But sometimes we're so afraid to step into what that new version is because we don't know what it is, or just stepping away from what we have become accustomed to knowing, and that anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. We did say that we might go down a few rabbit holes. We've already started.
And in fact, my husband and I are doing a course at the moment and it's personal development, and it's really along those lines that you're talking about that evolution, but how we get stuck or feel that it feels unsafe, right? To maybe move out of that and make a change. But a lot of that is those preconditioned beliefs that we've created throughout our life to keep us safe or to help us understand where we fit in the world.
100%. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think too, and those, I personally, from my experience and work with other people, those beliefs have been founded from things we've agreed with, right? We've agreed with something we've been told, or that we've heard, or that we've seen, or we've then made up, like we've seen something, we've made up a story about it that we've then agreed with. And then, but we've never re-examined the story we tell. Like, when do you stop and go, hold on a minute? You might get all the warning signs, right? Like, you're a health professional, right? You will deal with the same kind of arenas. We're in the same arenas or fields in terms of from that viewpoint of health. So often our body or an area of our life is screaming at you, trying to get you to take notice of the fact that maybe you might want to review something. And it, does the light tapping until it hits you with a big fat sledgehammer sometimes, until you take notice. And often I do think it comes out as health, in a health way, because I do think that's often when we will finally pay attention. Warning signs have generally been there for ages. So yes, it's an interesting topic.
It is. I'm going to take us on to the topic of your book. And I think that there's probably a whole bunch of the stuff that we've already talked about in those few introductory moments that have been the catalyst for your book, right? So your book's called Living from the Inside Out, How to Become a Modern Day Wonder Woman. And so I wanted to have a chat with you about that, because there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, and you've been kind enough to send me a copy, and I've started it, but I have by no means made my way through the entire book yet. I wonder what inspired you, firstly, to write this book?
Yeah, look, when I turned 40, maybe that was a bit of a turning point. I think there's certain time. I think we go through seasons in our life. I'll call them seasons, or phases, or whatever you want to name them. And there are awakenings, maybe, throughout those seasons as well. And so 40 for me was an awakening. It was a new season. And whether it was because I turned 40 or the circumstances, I don't really know. Okay, the pandemic happened to hit within those times as well. So that probably accelerated all of what was going to happen anyway. But I recall at 40, and I remember looking at myself in the mirror thinking, why? Why does the outside not look like how I feel on the inside? Why am I working my ass off, excuse my language, but tail off in the gym, with my nutrition was good, everything was great, but I'm not representing myself how I want to. Now that came across in many ways, physically, but also then the feedback I'd get from other people as well. And they'd say, oh, you're this, you're that, you're hard, you're blah, blah, blah. I'd come across their perception. People who knew me didn't think that, but I'm like, And I'd sit there and I'd contemplate this, because I like to think a lot, and I'd contemplate this and I think, what is going on? Like, that is not who I am. Like, these things, these representations, I've built that obviously for whatever reason, but this is not really who I am. Why can I not get the inside translation out in the real world? And I think when I kind of hit that 40, I thought, that's enough. I'm not doing it this way anymore. Things must change, and I'm prepared to redefine myself, and however that, and I knew that would not necessarily be a pretty journey, but I thought, well, I help other people do this, so I need to put my money where my mouth is and actually do it, like really express that. And I think there's so many amazing women in the world who have all this ability and talent. I believe everyone's a modern day Wonder Woman, but we're so getting into this point of feeling like we're restricted by our environment that we've created, or our thoughts, all of those things, and not expressing ourselves truly, and through whatever means, or means that we're passionate about, right? Like a lot of women are very undercommunicated. They're in an environment too where And I see that all the time where they feel very restricted. It leads to burnout when you can't fully express yourself as a whole person, as all of you. So I think from that internal drive of wanting to change things for my own self in my own life, and from all the outside, I looked very successful. I was I was competing at CrossFit at high level, right? Like, so it wasn't like I wasn't unfit, but it just wasn't in alignment. It wasn't all feeling right. And most of the people I work with and coach feel like that, right? They're just like, something, where is me? Where have I gone? Where's the me part of this? Like, I've got all the trappings, the success is going okay. Well, it seems like it is anyway. But they also know that they're not too many steps away from major meltdown, burnout, or it all falling down, because they're only just holding it together. And that's where I was. And I thought, this is not how life is supposed to be. So I decided to go on the journey, on my own internal journey, and work out the paths and the strategies. What have I used before? And what am I going to use, particularly at this kind of season of life? How am I going to build my life forward in a way that serves me and then serves everyone else, as opposed to serving everyone else and not serving me at all? So that's kind of where the book, I guess, came from. And through finding my own voice, I thought, wow, what a better way to find my own voice than to write a book. And I thought also, what a better way to transform my body than to decide to compete in figure bodybuilding. Well, if you're going to go the full thing, you do the full thing. So that's pretty much how it all came about.
Cool. And yeah, I totally agree that it's a journey, and we do have an awakening. And in fact, I had in my notes about awakening, because it's really interesting. I turned 40 a few years ago, and so did my husband. And we hear this midlife crisis, right? But it's not really a midlife crisis, it's a midlife awakening. Because I feel like life just kind of happens to you, and you do all of the things. You go to school, you go to uni, or you get a job, you start a family, and then it's like, what am I doing? And it's the first time that you had for a long time to really evaluate what's working for you and what's not, and who are you, and what do you, what's the point? What's my purpose? I just don't feel like we have the opportunity to really get into that stuff when we're younger, or maybe that's just the way things have been. Maybe it's evolving a bit for younger people, but
yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Because I think because we don't ask kids what's their purpose, we ask them what they want to be.
Yeah,
we don't ask them, what do they want to create in the world? What's the outcome there? Really, what's their stamp on the world? What's their outcome that they think they want to leave or they want to work with? We don't have them look at the purpose side. We just ask them what they want to be. And most kids don't know. They go, I don't know, because they don't even know what they're passionate about or their purpose is. So we've got it all the wrong way round. If we asked them the other way round and worked it backwards, then it would be a completely different story, because then they would find their purpose line and their passions. But I think that maybe it's when we have these, and I agree, I don't believe in a midlife crisis. I do think it's an awakening, and it is an opportunity, and maybe it's at around that point in time that we finally kind of take a breath, right? We've been so success focused. We take a breath and we reassess our values, and we go, is this even in alignment with my values anymore? Because by then a lot of people have a family, and like there's other things going on, or significant other at least. So we are not the same person that we were when we started on the journey, yet we've not really stopped to go, okay. And then when we get to that point, we do stop, and often, like I said, there's often indicators there that cause that stopping and that reassessment. Did you have something around that time that cropped up that assisted in the because I don't just think you turn 40, right, and then suddenly some light bulb goes on. Usually there's something else. Did you have a moment in your life around that time or something else that really kind of indicated, hold on a second, let me do a reassessment?
Oh yeah, I had my first baby when I was 40. Second one when I was almost 42. But we also 3 years ago sold our business in Sydney and moved out of the city into the mid-north coast, New South Wales countryside. So we had this massive life change. And I was just thinking as you were talking, we've had this so yes, we made some conscious decisions, right? We were like, we don't want to be living life like this because we've got children and we want to be able to experience time with them, because we had a gym and we were just working and tag teaming. And it's like, well, you know, basically we're working to pay the bills and we're not really living. So there was all of that. But it's really interesting that now we've got more time and we had the, you know, the circumstances that everyone's been put into with COVID. So we had a whole bunch of time to reassess and think about things because we weren't in the busyness of a job or that sort of stuff. It's kind of a bit confronting. It's kind of easier to be that, you know, in that busy mode, doing all of the things, because you don't have to go inward. And I'm very similar to you. I'm like constantly thinking of why am I behaving this way, and I'm assessing and, you know, observing and trying to learn from all of that. But yeah, it can be, when you don't have as much time doing all of the other things and you do have time to focus, it can, like putting a magnifying glass on what you're doing, it's pretty intense.
It's very confronting. And I think, you know, I do feel like the last few years have been hard. They've been hard on people for those reasons, because it has given people time. Now, in that time, you fill it with something, right? But as if you're in the awakening phase, it's self-assessment. And that can be really tough to go, oh, hold on a second. What I was creating isn't going to be in alignment with where I want to go. And I think if you're trying to, I think it's a very difficult journey to do all by yourself. I think, you know, having support network is essential to come out the other side of that, or tools or whatever, which is part of why I wrote the book, so people have tools, because I think you want to come out the other side of that better, brighter, happier, healthier, which, you know, when you're idle, no, idle hands are the devil's work, right? If you're idle and don't have a structure or a path to work yourself through that, it can be even more difficult.
Yeah. I had two questions that came up for me then. I want to talk more about your book, but I do want to touch on this very briefly. Like, you've referred to how to become a modern day Wonder Woman, and I totally understand what you mean by that. But there's this other side of me that's like, so many women are trying to be Wonder Woman, right? And it's to their detriment. So how do we define what it means to be a modern day Wonder Woman when there are so many expectations on us to be exactly that?
Yes, I understand your question.
Do you know what
completely.
I mean? It's like,
absolutely, 100%. I think the difference is Superwoman versus Wonder Woman.
Got it.
So I think, right, this is my viewpoint.
Yeah.
Is when we are trying to be Superwoman. So from my viewpoint, which is why I did not title it Be a Superwoman.
Superwoman, yeah.
I think that you're trying to do everything for yourself, for everyone else, like literally everything. without consideration of self in terms of whether or not that's working for you, the consequences, nothing. You just, and that leads to a lot of martyrdom as well in terms of literally that self-sacrifice part of. Now we can pull apart the thinking behind that, but we won't go there because literally we'll need another hour. So but I do believe, it's that superwoman mentality where I've got to do it all. I've got, and I need to show my life and demonstrate my life in a certain way in order to show that I'm successful. Often when superwoman is the superwoman mentality is, we also think we need to demonstrate success in a certain way. Right? I can only be successful if I'm demonstrating that I can handle it all and I'm not falling apart and I don't have emotions and I'm like up all the time and everything's wonderful. And I think that's the downside of personal development, right? Because the other side is emotions are normal. To go up and down in emotions is completely normal. And if you can't own that, you are going to have trouble, because then the issue with emotions is if you're stuck in one, if you get stuck there, now we have a problem. Right? So you should be able to fluctuate and demonstrate emotions. Kids are a wonderful example of this, right? They can be screaming at you 1 minute and then crying at you the next, and then the next minute they're as happy as Larry, and you're
Giving
wondering,
you a cuddle.
yeah, you're back at the beginning emotion going, but hold on a second, you were just angry. I'm still at angry. I can't keep up. Right?
Yeah.
But that's freedom of expression. That's just normal. Whereas we don't fluctuate or change as readily as that, because we have all these other considerations. So I feel, from my perspective of how I define it, is that's the superwoman mentality. Modern day Wonder Woman mentality is you have empathy, you have authenticity, and you know that you have strengths and weaknesses, that they play out. And I don't really believe in strengths and weaknesses in the normal context, because I think it's all environmental.
No,
right?
Yeah.
What
Someone else has generally defined what
100%.
Yeah.
And you'll never know where your boundaries are until you go to the very edge of them or go past them, and then you'll know where they are, right? Like, we're often restraining ourselves with respect to that. So I think from my perspective, or I know from my perspective, in terms of what I believe the definition of a modern day Wonder Woman is someone who is understands themselves, understands and wants to live an authentic life. They're quite empathetic to others, not necessarily sympathetic because they're different, but empathetic. And they can have a vulnerability. They know when to ask for help, and a modern day Wonder Woman actually does that while still supporting her family and supporting herself and doing all of those things which we all love and want to do. So it's not necessary, but defining success in a way that works for you as the modern day Wonder Woman, not under someone else's restrictions, controls, or what someone else has said you should be, could be, whatever expectations. Exactly. And then you demonstrate that. Like, if you like bright, shiny things, great. That can be a definition of success, not mine. Right? So I like the attainment of goals, but that doesn't necessarily have to come with it. Right? So whatever that is to you is totally fine. And then you can own that authentically. And I think that's a very big difference between the two. It's like calm versus force versus flow, right?
Right.
I think modern day Wonder Woman you can get into that flow of life. Is it easy to get there necessarily? No, it takes internal work.
Yeah. Have you been a superwoman?
Oh,
Have
yes.
you lived in the shoes of the superwoman?
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, I remember thinking, okay, well, if I just get to this point, right, then I'll have it all, or I'll have more space, or but there was never any point. That just was never ending. Why? Probably because I kept moving the goalpost, right? But it was like that was a road that never ended. And it led to a lot of burnout and exhaustion and injuries and all of those things, because it was just a never ending thing. You just keep, I think you said before, Nadine, your gym was very successful, but you just work more.
Yeah.
And then you just do, like, you just set the next target and the next goal, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I have absolutely had to work my way out of that way of living and that mentality. Yourself?
Oh, look, it's interesting. When I've read your introduction of your book, I'm not that kind of success-driven person. I strive for things, but I'm not super competitive. And interestingly, I've competed in CrossFit at competition level, right? Back in the early days. I'm a bit of a a bit of a has-been now. But I was thinking about it like in the lead up to our chat today, because I have some friends, obviously, who are competitive CrossFit athletes, and they really thrive in that arena. But when the fun went away, when it was about competition, it didn't float my boat anymore. It made me feel uncomfortable. I didn't like it. I liked doing it because it was fun, and I was good at it. So, well, that's just one example. I like feeling successful, but yeah, I'm not like super driven to the. I've never been to the felt like I've been to the point of burnout. In fact, I probably change directions
Well,
if I
but
see
I
it
think that
coming. I don't know.
fluidity, yeah, fluidity is a good thing. I think that's a
Yeah.
great thing though, but I think there is a difference between competition and games as
Well,
well.
you were quite driven though by the competition, were you?
Not so much the competition with
Okay,
others. I
right.
don't like competition,
No,
actually. I like to, for me, it's about being the best version of myself and seeing
got
what
it.
that is.
Yeah,
I'm extremely curious to find out where the boundaries are of
right.
things. And sometimes I probably push them a little too far. So you learn a lot when you're out in the dangling out in that kind of area. But I like games. I love the game of expressing myself through different things and just seeing how far can that go.
Right.
That you know, I don't like competing against other people. Quite frankly, it drives me nuts. I'm just like,
Really?
why are you? I remember being in competitions. I've been in loads of competitions throughout my life
Mm.
because I've been an athlete for pretty much forever. But I'm standing going, why are you wanting to compete with me? I don't really care. Like, compete with me all you like, but I'm just in competition with myself. I just want to be the best version of me. So equally, I agree when that game of, fun's a value for you, right? Like then kind of if that game of fun, which is, if that's important to you, when that kind of goes out of it, it's like, huh,
Yeah,
why am
not
I
into
doing
it.
this?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with you. But I think it comes down to what your values are, like what's the most important to you, which obviously clearly fun's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's got to be fun, even if it's not like literally fun. I've got to feel good about it. It's got to make me feel joyful, like
Yeah.
there's I guess with CrossFit is the example, is like the camaraderie and the banter and like having a good time with your friends. But yeah, I've noticed more and more how that transfers over into so many other things. Like it's obviously very high value. If you take the fun out of it for some reason, then yeah, not there. Yeah, interesting how you said that you were only in competition with yourself, but do you feel like you're pretty hard on yourself if you've pushed yourself to like some,
Oh yeah.
or
Look, I can be
you've
very.
set your sights very high, would you
I
say?
do set my sights, yes, and I think that I don't know where that's come from. It's always been.
Mm,
I've always been like that. Just I'm like, oh, but it still comes from a point of curiosity. It's
right.
just like, I wonder if I can do that. It's like, okay, where's the top of the tree?
Yeah.
All right, okay. Well, if that's the top of the tree, well, let me see if I can do that.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's that curiosity to see just what I can do. But the flip side of that, everything's a double-edged sword, right? Because the flip side of that drive is sometimes I don't stop to look and think, oh, hold on a sec. is this good for me?
Mm.
Is this actually helping or harming my life or myself or other people around me? And then, but at some point I will, and that has come out of, it can often be an injury. It could have, the pandemic was a great example. That massive reassessment of going, hold on. But I'm learning still, I think, to assess more readily, like to reassess regularly. Like for me now, it's like weekly. I'll go, okay, are these things working?
Yep.
Are they not working? What do I need to change? And that could be daily, but generally I'll do that weekly, where I will really look now and go, no, we need to tweak the path.
Wow. Yeah,
and not putting blind, the other thing too, I think, Nadina, which is just going to be not putting blind faith in other people, not giving our power over to someone else to dictate to us that the way that we should head as well. Like that can be even, right, you would see that from all the training you've done and having a gym. People can put their blind faith in you as a coach.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you only know you. And
exactly. Yeah.
And I don't know whether or not this is hurting you or not hurting you or whatever. So you still, you want people to still run it through, no matter what, even though it might be the best advice of their life, they still need to run it through their own filters and make sure that it's right for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's part of being a good coach, actually, is being able to get people to understand what they're doing and how it feels and assess, what they think they're capable of. And then you kind of guide them a little bit and, hold them back when necessary. But, when you think they're ready to push, I ask them. Yeah, because it's a dance, I guess. That coaching stuff, and I'm sure, like in any kind of coaching, it's a bit of a dance. It's like giving someone the power to make decisions for themselves and being their guide, rather than just saying, well, this is what you need to do, and expecting them to follow.
Exactly.
Okay, the book. Back to the book. Well, we haven't really gone away from the book, but back to the book. You mentioned your daughter. And that becoming a parent, I think a daughter, right?
Yeah, daughter. Yes.
Yeah. And that was a bit pivotal for you as well. And I certainly would tend to agree that being a mother is pivotal. So let's dive into the motherhood thing a little bit. Like, what happened? Because you were obviously, as you said, you were doing all of the things, and then you became a mum.
Yeah, it is very pivotal, right? Because well, you're pregnant, and I had a great pregnancy.
I loved being pregnant.
I love being pregnant too, right?
Yeah.
It was fabulous. Because I was still training all the way. Like I literally trained the morning I went into labor, right? Like no issues. Okay, I think I had morning sickness for a day or something. Like so I had, and people probably listen to this and go, oh, far out, but that was the reality. I had a great pregnancy, and it just is what it is. I know that not everyone has that journey, but I did. And so that was fine. I was still working, I was still training. I'm like, okay. And I kind of had this plan. Well, at the time, actually, I was doing Olympic weightlifting, and my plan was to still go to the Commonwealth Games. So I literally had it kind of planned out, thinking, okay, well, assuming I have a good labor recovery time, and then had my training planned out, recovery time, the whole thing, right? So I was like, I can still make it to the Commonwealth Games. We're fine. Because suddenly I don't know, it was like a switch turned on that suddenly, no, mumhood is the path you're heading. I'm like, okay. So we fell pregnant very quickly. The pregnancy was great, and then labor was very long, but then no one prepares you for being a mum. Nobody, because right, like, so you're pregnant, and then you have labor, and now you are actually a mum with a physical being. There's no time in between. It's like, now what do I do? Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like, and that was what it was like. I'm like, oh, I have to take this little being home. I didn't even know what to do with this little person. And so, one, that was a bit of a shock. And then two, you get home with this little being, and I'm kind of like, well, okay. So I had this sort of planned, sort of where I thought I was heading with this. Now I've got this little being that I'm responsible for, that I love, and I'm like, well, who am I now? Who am I now that I'm a mum? Well, I'm not who I was, and I can't go back to that ever, because that phase of life is done. Okay, I am this thing called a mum, whatever that means, but I still want a career, and I know I want a career. I'm like, well, how do I put all that together? And it was a really very challenging transition for me, because I just had no idea. And I felt like I had a blindfold on at times. I felt like I had, I've been spun around on a Ferris wheel at times. I just had no, I didn't have a way to navigate forward. And so that was, like I said, it was very challenging to not only bond with my child, but then also know who I was now and where I wanted to kind of go with all of this, because I just knew that what I was doing was not exactly what I wanted to be doing, and it wasn't really going to work. Now I've got a baby who I did not want to have grow up in daycare. I did not become a mum from my value standpoint. I didn't become a mum to put my child in full-time care. So it was just that shock. And I remember one of my friends said, oh, do you think you've got postnatal depression? And I'm like, look, if I went to the doctor, that is possible. However, I don't intend going to the doctor for them to tell me that, because it's not necessarily going to help me get out of it. I said, what I do believe I have is a crisis of identity, because I don't quite know who I am. And I have a being that's dependent on me, and I don't quite know how to do that yet. So I'm in a middle phase. I'm in the messy in between. And it's uncomfortable, and I don't like it, because I don't like being in the messy in between. I like to know where I'm heading, or at least think I know where I'm heading. Whether or not we can't, I don't believe, you can fully plan it out to every echelon, but having a direction and a purpose is always a good thing. So it took some time to find my feet and own the identity of being a mum and what that meant for me. And also then to go, as a mum now in this new life, as a mum, what do I want my life to look like now? And how am I going to make that happen? What did you find anything similar?
I like exactly the same. The reason I laugh when you say, because no one tells you what it's like. Oh, I was going to go straight back to work because we had the gym, it's fine. We just take the baby with us. and then you have the baby, and the baby doesn't sleep. And and you you're muddling your way through, and there's no, there's no way I can go back to work. I could barely, we lived opposite a shopping center, and I needed to go to the post office, and it was the biggest deal to try and get to the shop in between feeding the baby and what if the baby starts crying while I'm in the queue? It was totally back to basics. Yeah.
Yes, I laugh, but I feel like I could recall.
And I was, before that, I was like, yeah, what's everyone going on about? I can handle this. No problem. I was like, and I do think,
I thought that too.
Yeah. You kind of have to let go of everything, don't you? And just go with, you literally have to go with the flow, because even on a day-to-day basis, if you go, right, today's going to be a great day, I'm going to get up, I'm going to feed the baby because I know exactly when they're going to be hungry, and then we're going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and nothing goes according to plan, and you feel like a complete failure, and you're lucky to even get out of the door,
or even your pajamas on a good day. If you get to have a shower that day, you're winning, right? Like, oh my God, I had a shower today.
Intense. But when you let go, of all of that stuff, it kind of makes things a bit easier. But if you like, I'm pretty organized. I like having, my head around things. Yeah, I found it really hard. And then I had Winnie, and she's only just 17 months after Louis. And someone said to me when we went back to the UK and Winnie was 8 months old, and she was like, "Oh, how you doing? How's motherhood treating you?" And I was like, "I don't think it's brought out my best side." I was
No, but that's the
I
thing,
think I was horrible.
To answer those. I remember reading a book. I read Buddhist for Mum, the Buddhist mother or something.
Okay.
Anyway, because literally that's what I thought. I'm the worst mum in the world, because I am like, I have these moments where I'm like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. Like, I really don't. I can't put it back in. So what am I going to do now? Like literally, it just scrambling to find. And I think it's that. I really think it's finding a new identity and that absolute letting go of what you think everything was. Because, like I said, like I'm like you, I like to have some organized plans, blah. But then when after I went back to the gym because I could, right? Well, I started training again, but all that reason was gone. And I had different reasons for things. And I'm like, oh, not that. And it was a lot of, oh, not that. That was how I felt like I worked things out. It's like, well, that didn't work. Okay, try something. Not that, not that, not that. Because I in the scramble to understand how to raise a little being and be a mum, and sleep deprivation and all of that, it was a lot of letting go of previous direction. And I think it's not that dissimilar to the last few years. It's that time, and those times in between, the in-betweens, and another awakening, but the weird thing is, through that motherhood phase, you kind of know the gifts are coming, but it's just in between feeding, trying to go to the bathroom yourself or have a shower or even cook a meal, let alone get out of the house, right? Like, so sort of, yeah, it was an interesting dive into myself, and well, at least who I thought I was, and that was not who I was. There were more layers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you kind of just have to get through it, don't you? It's an initiation rather than an awakening.
It is an initiation. That's right.
And
definitely.
The thing that I think, the fact that people have been doing this since the beginning of time, and this is really what we're all about, right? Is keeping the human race alive. Is the only real reassurance that you have that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's right. Like, plenty of other people have done it.
Lots of people have done
it, we can work it out.
People keep doing it, so it must be okay.
Great.
But it evolves, but it definitely gets easier. And I feel bad because you can't, people tell you their labor stories, and I think that part of that is like a process of getting through the trauma that is labor, right?
Yes.
So women need to talk about it just to kind of go, that was full on, right? And they don't mean to scare anyone who's pregnant and hasn't gone through it yet, but it's like, dealing with trauma. But then you don't want to tell a new mum how fucking hard it's going to be, do you?
No, you don't.
And they're going,
they wouldn't do it.
So good. The first 2 weeks when they go, it's so good, they're sleeping every night. And I'm like, that's great. It's not gonna last.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. You just wouldn't. And but also the further distance away, and as you've kind of got through, you kind of work it out. So you kind of forget,
Yeah.
right? Like it's easy to forget,
Mm.
or well, it's sort of is and isn't. But yes, I agree. Those stories, but I do think we are like women are communicators, right?
Mm.
And there is so much we don't communicate about,
Mm.
and I think that is a problem in our modern society that
Mm.
women are just not communicating to the degree that they need to, and to a lot of women have lost the art of communication and what it
Yeah.
really is. So that would, if I had a hope for the world and something I would love to see change, is that women really embrace their ability to communicate and really hone in on that and enhance that and use it.
Mm. I think also, like, oh, look, this is a theme that comes up in my conversations a lot, and it's that, well, it's like women being in a man's world, right? So well, we're trying to do all of the things, the superwoman things, but we forget that we can support one another. We're afraid to ask for help. But when you are with a group of women and you've got your kids around, and like, someone is taking the baby, you get that in, I'll take the baby, and the baby stops crying because the mum needs a break and the baby can sense it. But when you're in those kind of community environments as women, well, that's where the Wonder Women are, right? um, but we don't have that, and we don't get to experience that as much as, or we don't even know that it's valuable, because it's become not a thing. It's not a thing. Oh God,
Yeah,
I'm
I
waffling.
agreed.
But
No,
I
I
think that
agree
your
with you.
book is perfect, like, um, because it's about reconnecting, right, with
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it's about.
womanhood.
Yes, it is about
It's a lost
reconnecting with.
art.
It is a lost art. It
Yeah,
is absolutely a lost art. I mean, I skipped that somewhere. I don't know where the lessons were for womandom or
embracing who you
womanhood.
are. No, because you're told
Yeah,
that if you're outgoing or driven, that you're bossy, loud. You've even mentioned some of the things that you've had said to you. Aggressive, is that a word that
yeah,
you used?
hard,
Hard. Yeah.
hard. Yeah, like we get labeled with all of these things, yet, if we can embrace the wholeness of being a woman, that wholeness of femininity, because you do have, everyone, no matter what, has masculinity and femininity.
Mm.
That's not gender orientated, but being like fully embracing that womanhood and expressing that,
Mm.
it's such a gift. Like it
Mm.
is a absolute gift that we have and we can use. I just feel like we don't teach it, we don't talk about it, and it's like skipping this whole, it's certainly not taught at school. And so then when do you learn it, right? Where do you learn it? When do you learn it? And a lot of it's from media, which is some concocted version of it. It's not real. So then what? Right? So that's that going to for me, the awakening, I guess, is really been about finding the wholeness of womanhood and helping other people to get to that and express that, because I just think there's so many gifts in that, and not being in that masculine, male orientated or dominated way of living.
Mm. Yeah, totally. And like, well, there's gosh, there's so many different sides of that when you say that we live in a, and I said it as well, living in a masculine, male orientated world. It's not just in the workplace, is it? It's like the roles we play out as a family. And I think that women are carers, and so it's normal that we have those kind of roles of the man, goes out and does the job. I mean, that sounds a bit contrived, and the woman stays at home. Like, I value that more, and I don't see it as a, necessarily a bad thing, because I want to be able to take care of my children and my family. But there's also, but it's well, it's another side of the coin, isn't it? It can be a negative thing for it to be an expectation that that's all a woman does.
Yes.
And it's kind of has negative connotations because of that. And then women want to be more like men and go out and work and do all the things. And then, oh my God, where am I going with this?
Well, it is, but it's, again, it's finding your expression of what womanhood is to you.
Yeah.
In the current day society, where it can be a little
black and white.
Yeah. And not even real. Because most of what's painted out there is a version that people want you to see.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily what's actually going on behind the scenes. So for me, I think, well, why not have both the same? Like, let's get real. What's the point of having shiny, well displayed life on the outside if everything behind the scenes is crappy? That having the ability to have all of that the way you want it and functioning the way you want it.
Yeah.
Why not? Whatever that looks like to you. And I think it brings that, both that ability to be very driven, but also that softness and vulnerability that blend together. And I think that's what leadership is and will be in the future, is the ability to be both. And I think if people just do one, I don't think that is going to survive in the world we are creating moving forward.
How old's your daughter?
She is 13.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yep.
So, how do you teach her about this stuff? I'm assuming like she goes to like regular school and stuff like that, because I feel like so much of the stuff that they believe, like you can tell your kids all of the things that you didn't know and that you've said that we don't get taught at school, right? But there's so much influence, external influence. How do you go about like keeping your daughter on the path to womanhood and to, being a modern day Wonder Woman when she comes of age, whenever that might be?
Absolutely. So we are quite strict around what she watches.
Right.
So she does not have social media accounts unless, she has one that we monitor. And she does not have a TikTok account, as much as that might seem contrived. But I don't think that children are emotionally ready for the content that they're exposed to. So I will do everything in my power to ensure that she's not exposed to that for as long as I am possibly able to. So that is a big part of it. I don't, because I know that it's just too much of an emotional influence.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an external story that she just doesn't need to be exposed to. That way, we still are able to have some input, and we communicate a lot. That is essential all the time about anything and everything. And we have always asked her, if she doesn't understand something that's happening at school or outside of the home, bring it home so we can discuss it and look at it and understand it. And then you can make whatever decisions you want to thereafter. Even words kids are using at school. Often I will, she'll come home, Mum, so-and-so said whatever. And it's like, well, do you know what that word is? And she's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, let's actually look it up in the dictionary. And then, oh, Mum, that what that means? I'm like, yes, that is what that means. And they probably don't know what it means, but they're using it, and is that a word you would want to use? And she's like, no, I don't want to call someone that, or I don't want to, that's terrible. It's like, well, yes, but now you understand. So now you can make a decision. So a lot around, debunking a lot of myths, a lot around communication, and keeping her away from the toxic side of social media for as long as I'm humanly able, as long as possible. Look, I know that the day will come where she will do so, and that is okay. But at the same time, not just keeping her away from it, because that is not necessarily helpful, because then she'll just want potentially to use it more. That also comes with a lot of education around what it is, the rabbit holes that can go down, like what are you actually looking at versus what's real. So a lot of talking and education around that. So I'm not just saying you can't do that or you can't have that, because like kids want to do the things that you tell them they can't do, but also comes with that as much education as we can find.
It's well, I'll be interesting to hear how you go. You might have some tips.
on my test experiment of one, so far so good. But there's a few more years to go, so my test experiment could go horribly wrong. But as I say to her, I said, look, we're doing the best we can with the information we have, and we'll probably stuff up lots. It's your job to go out and fix it and to live the life that you want, regardless of what we've done and how we've raised you. You have the power to choose. So but we will do the best we can with what we have. Not saying we're right. That's what I say to her. So, and she laughs at me.
Oh, that's good. It sounds like you've got a great relationship. Now, I keep saying that I'm going to refer to your book, and we've almost come to the end of our hour. And I haven't well, I kind of have very loosely, but I think that the important thing is that the chat that we've had really is an expression of what's inside the book, right? Your personal journey, the fact that we do grow and evolve, we have awakenings, and that your goal with the book is to I guess allow other women to go on that journey that you've done, the journey that you've taken by writing the book, so that they can be a modern day Wonder Woman, and live out their best lives, right? Because that's what it's all about.
It is what it's all about. And this,
like, we don't just get to 80 and die. We get to choose some shit.
Absolutely. And I hope whatever age that we get to at the, whenever the end is, that we get there with bumps and bruises and scrapes, and like we've lived fully, like we've lived it out, not get there and then go, I wish I have done. I think, no way, live now.
Yeah with the future in mind.
Absolutely, with the future in mind. You've got to have a future
because a lot of people would say, well, I'm living in the now, and they're getting getting
well, and I agree. I think you need to live in the now, but I think you absolutely need,
be mindful
80-20 or whatever. Like you must have a future focus, because if you're not, you got to know where you want to know where you're heading.
Very briefly, do you want to talk us through those 9 superpowers?
Yeah, I can. Look,
you can just kind of give us a heading for each.
The book's broken down into, I broke it down into superpowers, because obviously it's about being a modern day Wonder Woman. So the first one is finding your okay space inside. We go to embracing your femininity, the gift of self-expression, materializing your dreams, intuition and magic, because I think there's lots of magic out there. The sword of success, mind control, the shield of immunity, and the battlefield. So really, people can work through the book chronologically. Like, they just pick whatever flavor they feel like. It doesn't have to be chronologically, because each, identifying your superpowers, I think everyone has them, and identifying them and being able to then implement them in the world is a very hands-on implementable book. Being able to harness your superpowers is such an awesome gift, knowing what they are and then harnessing them, rather than trying to dumb them down. And a lot of people are trying to a lot of the women try and hold themselves back from those things that they are very good at, or that they've been wronged for. Yet that's some of them best gifts to give to the world. So the journey is to find them again if you've lost them, identify them, and then embrace them and live them.
Great. And so it's kind of like a handbook, right?
Very much.
So you're guiding us through those stages, which is great, because there's some practical elements as well. What would you expect a woman at the end of completing your book to come away with, or what would be their next steps? Like, what would they expect upon completion?
From my goal and hope is that from when a woman starts the book to the end of the book, that they feel and trust in themselves again.
Yeah,
and
nice.
They feel safe in themselves to go out into the world and truly live the life that they want.
Wow, that's pretty good. Sounds pretty good to me. How can we get hold of the book, Alison? We'll obviously share some info in the notes for the podcast, but do you want to tell us how we can get hold of your book?
Absolutely. You can jump on and grab it on my website, which is www.thealison, as in THE, Alison with one L, ALISON, Wheeler.com. It's also on Amazon as well.
Right. Thank you so much. Any closing words before we say farewell?
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute hoot. And yeah, I think everyone deserves to be their own version of a modern day Wonder Woman. So, go out there and live it.
Agreed. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.